Francis Ngannou's back in the mix, but not against an opponent that we thought it would be. This comes after Francis Ngannou parted ways with the PFL. They both came to an agreement that while his contract was going to expire in 3 months, he was not going to fight within that time frame, so they both mutually agreed to walk away. And Francis, as a free agent, is now taking on Philippe Lins at the Netflix Ronda Rousey versus Gino Carano card on May 16th. It's going to be an MMA bout, championship rounds, 5x5. Now, a lot of people don't know anything about Philippe Lins, and I'll tell you, he was a former UFC fighter. I think he went 4-0 in the promotion, and he was a bit of a dud. His last fight was against Ion Cutelaba, where he won kind of a close decision, and the UFC decided to part ways, and he's been gone under the radar since, so I think this is kind of just an easy matchup for Francis to keep him in headlines, because Francis has kind of burned bridges, let's be honest here. After he, left with PFL, that kind of showed that not only was he done with the A side of the UFC, but he's done with the B side of PFL. All he has left in MMA is probably one championship, and all of his money outside of this is going to be made probably through boxing of some sort, whether it's dirty boxing, bare knuckle boxing, genuine boxing. He did really good against Tyson Fury, but after that AJ knockout, I'm not sure how much he wants to hang out in there. It's insane from Francis. He is now burned bridges with the number 1 and number 2 MMA organizations in the world. You can't really say that it's Dana's corruptness. You have to blame Ngannou for, I guess, 50% or maybe even more of why his career is going the way it is. He seems to be a very difficult negotiation. He seems to have really high standards of himself while not giving any brand loyalty to the companies that sign him. PFL gave him his biggest payday of all time, gave him 5 times what he made against Ciryl Gane in his final UFC fight in which he dominated him over 5 rounds. They gave him 5 times that. He made probably anywhere from $1 to $2 million off that fight. I can't remember the disclosed payday. But Francis just keeps doing this, getting good opportunities, getting money, and then just backstabbing the company, it seems. But he's a draw. He's a big name. He's a power puncher, and I think any organization is going to chase him down for a fight. So that's why he's fighting in Netflix now. And they recently held a press conference, and people were calling him out for, doing the UFC dirty and now doing PFL dirty. And he had a bit of a response to that. I'll let him take it away here.
There's a vocal part of the fan base that has been disappointed since you left the UFC. You've ruined your legacy because we haven't seen you fight.
Give me a definition of legacy.
Your lasting memory in this.
That's what he does. You'll be like, hey, so this is happening. It'll be like, what do you mean by this? I don't understand this. Explain what you mean by this, because we mean this differently. That's not the case. Ngannou is very petty. And even when they asked him to fight Jake Paul, he was going, I don't get it. When they sent him the contract, he literally did an interview when they were like, I think it was Ariel, was like, why didn't you want to fight Jake Paul? And he goes, I don't get it. I don't. Like, he's clearly ducking and he's making horrible decisions. That Jake Paul fight would have been the biggest payday of his life. And I think we're probably still going to see it because a little bit more happened at this press conference. But what is this mentality from Francis Ngannou to think you can't go to the store and pay with legacy? This is bullshit. Promotions feed fighters and they're fighting for legacy. Good for you. Keep the legacy. Give me my pay. You get pay by building legacy. There's a reason Jones was offered $30 million to fight Tom Aspinall. If you were a consistent champion, you'd probably be in you'd probably be making multi-millions per fight now if you just kept a really good relationship with the UFC and stayed on top, because it seems like eventually they will fill your pockets if you're a good enough champion. We see Alexander Volkanovski, Makhachev, I think those guys make over $1 million per fight. Like, they make good money. And Francis is just selfish, man. He got the best payday of his career with PFL, and he's like, I'm not fighting with them again. And now he's just trying to go to another organization. He's like doing one good shift for the company and then never showing up for a shift again and just leaving without putting his 2 weeks in. Is kind of how I can describe it as a little 9-to-5 rat race guy. But furthermore, Jake Paul was at this press conference, and like I discussed, Francis Ngannou turned down Jake Paul a few months back, I think even years maybe, and Jake was really trying to get that fight, but Ngannou was saying, I don't get it, it doesn't make sense, maybe he was being undervalued, he didn't like the payday. But now Jake Paul's calling for that fight, and Francis wants it. Francis wants to win this fight to get to Jake Paul, and I'll let them take it away. They were in the crowd talking a bit at each other during this press conference.
No, I'm not interested in fighting Jake Paul.
Never mind.
Oh, listen, I'm not done. I'm interested in beating his ass.
Oh. Whoa,
No fighting him.
Okay, just beating his ass. Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm down. I've always been down. You were the option before Anthony Joshua, and you ran like a duck.
Jake Paul says that Francis Ngannou was the option before Anthony Joshua. So that fight was going to be made, apparently, based off what Jake's saying. And quote, you ran like a duck. And Ngannou was kind of going, I don't get this. I don't understand these negotiations. I don't like this pay. He just was trying to avoid this fight at all costs, it seemed. And now all of a sudden that he's not best chums with the best MMA promotion and not even the second best MMA promotion, he's kind of crawling back, begging for this Jake Paul matchup, knowing that Jake Paul's a big draw, knowing that Jake Paul can get him a multi-million, double-digit payday, like $1 million payday is what I meant to say there, sorry. And it's just, does this guy have a manager? Does this guy have a crisis management guy? Does he have a manager? Because it doesn't seem like he's making the best decisions for his career. I mean, the guy got to the UFC, was a powerhouse. He was fast-tracked to the title. He won the title, stayed on top, beat Cyril Gane. The whole Jones thing happened where Jones kind of ducked him, but he could have stuck around. He could have fought up-and-comers until Aspinall came along and fought him. That would have been a huge payday. Like, Francis could have made it good in the UFC. He just got too pushy in negotiations, and I'm not saying that Dana himself was, an angel. I think Dana was probably using some sleazy tactics that he does. I'm sure he was lowballing a bit of Francis. We've seen that recently. He was lowballing all of his UFC fighters, but paying Conor Benn $15 million. But Francis had this whole thing where now Dana's accusing him of assaulting him behind the scenes. It didn't really go well that Francis committed manslaughter and then saw like zero penalty for it. Really, I get it, and that's outside his fighting career, so I'm not going to hold that on him too much. But the guy has been a diva, essentially. He was the next big thing. He was the big thing. He was the strongest guy, hits as hard as a Ford Escort, and now he won't even stick around for more than one fight with a company because he's too good and he's too valuable. But he's not proving his value. He's not showing up to fight. He's not taking big matchups. Dude, Philippe Lins. Comment right now if you know who Philippe Lins is, because I guarantee majority of you don't. And I'll be frank, I didn't know who he was until about a year ago because I was going back and watching old fights for research, and I was like, where did this guy go? He was 4-0. So I know who he is, but nobody does, man. The guy's never been known as a huge KO artist. He's a big guy. He's like 6'2", athletic, explosive. He's kind of moving like Ankalaev at times, but nobody knows who he is. Francis Ngannou, he was up there with John Jones in talks for a fight, So this is really a layup, I think. We're about to see Philippe Lins get slimed in an MMA bout. Francis is going to have all this hype back behind him, and he's probably going to try to take this into a Jake Paul fight, which will make him millions upon millions, which that's finally something smart that he's done with his career, but I don't think the past few years of just dipping on the biggest promotions in the game and burning those bridges is the smartest decision, because now Dana will never sign him back. Even if Ngannou goes, look, I'll take $1 million to fight Pereira, to fight Jones, to fight Aspinall, to rematch Gane at the White House, Dana would still not do it, even though that's a fight that would draw views, especially since the White House is a bit underwhelming. If you saw my most recent video, go check that out. And it's just really bad decision-making from Francis Ngannou. Now, I hope that this all results in him getting a Jake Paul fight, and that maybe we see Jake Paul get slumped again. That'd be hilarious. Or maybe Francis gets slumped again. That'd be funny. But, like, as a fan, it's really annoying to see him play this diva game, because the dude could be, like, a legacy heavyweight. You could consider him, but just, it's like the Khabib thing. He didn't put in enough work to prove that as consistent as he was. That's a really bad example. Khabib, 13-0 undefeated, never lost the round. That was consistency. But Francis Ngannou was the guy who chinned everybody. And I would have liked to see him against some of the new guys. I would have liked to see him against, I was about to say Derek Lewis. That was one of the worst things ever. I mean, he never went against Pavlovich. He never went against Aspinall. I would have loved to see him slime Jailton Almeida before he got cut. Just seeing Francis in modern-day UFC heavyweight division, I think it would spice it up, especially now that Jones created a vacuum and Aspinall's injured. But with Pereira in the mix, there's a lot going on. And Ngannou, if he kept these good relationships, he could have been in the middle of this kind of heavyweight division Grand Prix, where I think he always has the chance to come out on top with the biggest payday, the best wins. But he doesn't see that in himself, apparently. Apparently, he sees himself as above that. And he did that with his negotiations in the UFC, and look where it's got him. He's done that now with the PFL, and look where it's got him. And I just hope he can turn this all around and get this Jake Paul fight. But I think his career in MMA, seriously, is done. Unless the UFC just flips on a dime, I don't see him being back in MMA headlines outside of just talking, man. I don't see an MMA fight against a super credible opponent happening outside of the UFC. But I digress. Let me know what y'all think of the situation. I think Francis probably should try to mend these bridges, but I don't know if Dana will ever do that. And the PFL is probably done with him, but he should have stuck around, man. I'm sure he could have gotten another $1 million payday. He had one more fight. Apparently, Fahea was the best guy PFL had to offer, so if I'm Ngannou, I'm slamming out another PFL can for $1 million payday. Like, comment, share, subscribe. This is kind of a fricked situation for Ngannou. If anything big happens, I'm obviously going to make an update video on it, but we'll see how he plays his cards this time. See ya.